here's the thinking about reading. Your child learns to read from K or pre-K to the third grade, and then from the fourth grade on, they read to learn. Okay, so basically there's kind of a barrier there at the third grade that a kid's not supposed to cross unless they can read. So your child cannot cross that barrier. And you have a meeting with your principals and so forth. And option number one is, well, they got to repeat the grade. And you say, oh my Lord, my kid's been with these kids for since pre-K, and I'm going to pull him out and make him go back to a year to another group. That's bad. Option number two is move the child forward into the fourth grade without regard for the reading skills. And that's why they call it social promotion, because somebody has judged that the social impact on that child is going to be bigger than the impact of not being able to read. Now, some school administrators might say to you, well, your kid will catch up. It doesn't happen. That's where that 25% number comes from. Very difficult to read when you get older. Somebody said it's like learning German when you're an adult. It's very difficult to do. Another possibility is, I hear this more and more, our school doesn't allow failure. We never hold anybody back. Now, believe me, guys, that's a convenience for the school and not for your families or your children. It's something they are doing for their benefit. Okay, now here's the data I've already quoted, and I won't quote it again, but there's the 60 million people in our population that cannot read very well. And here's a picture of social promotion from the state of Ohio. The tall bars are the percentage of the class that move forward, and they're almost all 100%. The smaller bars are the percentage of the children that pass the reading exam. Well, let's take Youngstown off to the end over here. 54% of their children in this year did not pass the reading exam, but every one of them moved forward into the fourth grade. That's social promotion. Now, here's the data gold mine that I found that really helps us to understand this. Let's take a line. First, let me point out that everybody on this chart has taken the National Assessment for Educational Progress exam given by the Department of Education. So they're all taking the same test. And on the first line up here in 2022, 39% of the kids, now they're already in the fourth grade. These exams are given in the winter of the fourth grade. So did they held back? No. Every one of these kids was moved forward. Now, I have no idea at all nationally where any kids get held back. If you look at Ohio, basically the answer is going to be no. Okay, so they read, 39% were below basic. That includes zero. That includes 10% and so forth up to a certain level. And then 29% were basic, 24% proficient, and 8% were really top drawer, the best readers. If you average these first column numbers, you get 37% of our kids are being advanced and they can't read. That's 2.2 million children. They go into the pool at the other end of the system, and they become part of these 25%. That's 55 million just there, the high school graduates. So I think it's totally unconscionable. I cannot believe that our people would do this. It just really upsets me, something awful, because between us, speaking is the number one skill we need, and next is reading. And we're passing a lot of junk up the line, and they'll never get to read. Some will, but rare event. So I'm asking you, Reform Commission, should we really bear down on this and push the right buttons to get this to happen? The answer that I can't tell you is Can the school start in K and get a kid to read? Or do we have to start even earlier than that for some of the children? 90% of a child's brain linkages are completed by the time they blow out their 6th grade candle. So if you've got children in our population that are not getting brain stimulation early on, you're going to have problems. So my recommendation is the book, we start them at 3 years old. This is what Maryland is going to be doing. Okay, number 2 has to do with set high standards and stick with them. Now, I've gone to a lot of school tours with the Mind Trust. And we get on a bus or we meet somewhere and we visit the school and so forth. There are 2 things that I think are essential to a top quality school. Number 1 is empowered teachers. And I was talking to a teacher I had breakfast with her last Thursday. And I said, do you feel empowered? Absolutely not. They never ask me anything. They just give me instructions. So empower teachers, and that's one of my 22, is empower teachers. Make them, get a delegation, not take 10% of your teachers and have them sit in on some of the meetings and help them make decisions. They don't get consulted. The other one is to set standards and stick with them. And what we have done is we've lowered and lowered and lowered and lowered the standard, and you'll see in a minute how bad it's been. So what kind of a standard delivers an A average to 47% of high school kids? We already said that. What kind of standards allows schools in Virginia? One school had 450 students. They opted to have 117 valedictorians. Another kid in Ohio at school in 80 had 85. I used to interview at IU Kelly Scholars. Kelly gave us from Steak and Shake $23 million, and one of the biggest things that came out of that was Kelly Scholars. So I'd interview a Kelly Scholar, and I said, you were valedictorian in your class? Yes, I was. And I learned, well, how many of you were there? 20. So, you can't trust that definition anymore. What kind of standards support social promotion? What kind of standards deceive 90% of the parents into thinking their children are doing well when they aren't? Now, the reason that happens is because the schools have discovered if they give away grades, they have happy parents, and if they got happy parents, they got a happy school. It's self-serving on the part of the school administrators. That's my analysis of it. So the other side of it, and I have a chapter that talks about self-esteem, one would be every kid gets a trophy. And what you're trying to do by giving away easy A's, you're trying to motivate them to, hey, I can do this, I can get A's. So, but it doesn't do that. It teaches them they can get an A and do very little in the way of work. So it's the bad outcome. What kind of standards remove all consequences for behavior? Now, I've got one slide here, and I'm going to show you another video. Then we're basically done. I was listening to a Dr. Phil TV show, November of 2022, and they were talking about grade inflation. And someday, if I write another book, or I'll be in some sort of conference, and somebody said, well, Garrett, what do you think the percentage of A's ought to be? Is it okay to have 84% right answers and still get an A? Is it okay to miss more than half of the questions and get a C? Okay, so I've got 4 options here. I need you to vote because I'm going to use this. How many, and I'll start at the bottom. How many of you think that number should be 88%? Nobody. How many of you think it ought to be 90%? A few. I may have to go back and count. How many of you think it ought to be 93%? Even more. Boy, that's encouraging to me. How many of you think it ought to be 95? Woo! All right, so really you're voting on 90, 93, 95, and it's about even, I would guess. So, but not what's up there. And actually, they never flunk anybody because it makes the school look bad. I've got interviews and so forth where the kid never showed up for school, and the principal or the kid tried to give him an F, and they wouldn't let him do that. Okay, now here is the next video, and I'm just going to show like 3 minutes of this. Now, here's what happens when you don't have consequences for actions, and it really messes up education. So here we go.
You've been a teacher for 25 years in this district. Have you ever seen it this bad?
Never. Never before. Any kid that would have threatened a teacher would have been gone that day. That right now. No questions asked.
Walking off the job weeks ago for what he says has and hasn't happened inside Washington Technology Magnet School in St. Paul, 8th grade math teacher Bruce Ringeman describes a toxic environment, absent, he says, of any real consequences for kids who cause trouble.
When a student can tell the principal to F off, nobody has anything anymore. What I say as a classroom teacher doesn't matter. What the behavioral specialists say in the hallway doesn't matter. What the security guard says doesn't matter. What the social worker says doesn't matter. What the counselor says doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you want to just take your anger out on teachers in St. Paul schools, you're welcome to do that.
He details his own disturbing experiences in a letter sent to staff in September with a subject line of "Stop the Madness."
Fridays and breaks can never come soon enough for me this year. I've always been able to make it to MEA without needing time off to recover, but not this year. This year I feel like I've been run over by a train every day I leave. This week I politely asked a student that wasn't supposed to be in my room to go to her class. This was 4 minutes after the bell had rung. Her response, "Quit talking to me. Get out of my space." I was 3 to 4 feet away. I then calmly repeated that she needed to leave, and she responded with, "Shut the f*** up, you asshole." When these kids are in the classroom doing whatever they want, swearing at teachers, threatening teachers, nobody's learning.
Ringeman has worked at the school for the last 5 years, but he says it's never been this bad, as some teachers are forced into daily confrontations, whether students are in class or not.
First of all, there are 8 to 15 kids that are in the halls all day. This happened last year. Certain kids never went to class the whole year.
Ringeman blames policy changes years ago by the St. Paul School District that he says allow students who act out due process.
Do you mean to tell me if a coworker of yours threatened to kick your ass, that they would be allowed to work the rest of the day until the investigation process played out? And she's like, no. I said, then why are you doing that with students? Like, are you telling me that you don't trust me as a teacher, that a student actually said, I want to beat you up or I want to kick your ass? If you don't trust me, then that's an issue. But if I come to you as a teacher and say this happened, that kid needs to go home now. I would say 80 to 90% of the kids, perfect. They know how to do school. They can do school.
How does that disruption affect the rest of your kids?
Nobody's learning because I'm taking time out to address these kids, to go get help. Sometimes I have to walk down the hall. I can't teach with all the conversations in class. I've taken the approach, I'm going to teach the kids that are here to learn. Many teachers take that approach.
The last straw happened a few weeks ago when Ringeman says he asked a student in the hallway who was supposed to be in class to keep it down. He says the student responded with a swear word and said he wished he could fight teachers.
So this happens, you've had enough, you decide to walk out.
So I emailed my principal and I said, either this kid goes home or I'm leaving today.
Ringeman says his concern was basically ignored and the student allowed to stay.
So a student can get away with saying that they want to fight teachers.
They want to fight teachers. I'm going to kick your ass. Quit talking to me or I'm going to kick your ass.
And they're allowed to stay in school.
They stay in school. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep. Shut the up. Oh, they stay in school.
And he's not alone. Alpha News reviewed other emails from teachers fearing for their own safety and the safety of their students at the same school. In an email, a spokesperson for the St. Paul School District says it, quote, could not comment on an individual student and or personnel matters, but that it strives to create welcoming schools where every student is seen, known, and valued. There are rights students are guaranteed when they're at school, as well as responsibilities that accompany those rights. The district pointed us to a handbook where behaviors and punishments are published. From what we could tell, Ringeman's comments would be considered a Level 3 violation, which may result in a dismissal from school. The St. Paul School District has lost nearly 20% of its enrollment in the last 10 years. Ringeman worries stories like his will only make matters worse. He's on a leave of absence and still deciding what he'll do next.
In your opinion, if this kind of behavior is allowed to continue, what happens?
Here's what's going to happen and has happened. Teachers will leave. This is an abusive relationship. There's only so much abuse a person can take.
Which leads back to that letter to staff from September.
You think we have a teacher shortage now? Who in their right mind would choose to teach under these conditions? We have 2 6th-grade math openings that weren't there at the beginning of the year. Who believes we will find teachers that will fill those openings? Stop the madness. Quit being afraid of lawsuits and begin giving immediate consequences. Speaking of lawsuits, the one that will bring change is a class action suit demonstrating how this behavior is stealing education from those that want to learn. But it shouldn't have to come to that. Implement changes that have been proven to be effective at getting behaviors under control. The pendulum has swung way too far to where it appears we are making excuses as to why students can't control their behaviors. We know that kids need boundaries and consequences. The question is, do we have the courage to put them in place? I'm willing to put my job on the line and risk my pension. I'd rather live poor than put up with this BS. Go ahead and discipline me, because that's the easy thing to do. Discipline those that speak the truth and let the chaos continue. That takes zero courage.
Okay, you got the idea. I've got one like this, only worse, from Green Bay. We're not talking Harlem, we're not talking Brooklyn, we're not talking New York City, we're talking St. Paul and Green Bay, Wisconsin. Some of the consequences of low standards, it demotivates top students. We have a lot of top students in this room right now, a lot of bright people who have performed and gotten great degrees and so forth. And I ask you, would you have done that if everybody got the same grade that you busted your buns to get? I don't think I would have. I don't know what will happen, but because I would not believe I had a very good degree. I think it would have been cheapened if I did not have some of my soul wrapped up in it. Removes the reality of learning is hard work. That is a big loss that we face today. I had a teacher down in Kentucky, where I went down to see my nephew, who was a teacher. She said, what parents want is good grades and no work. That's what they want. They don't go together. Well, they shouldn't. Otherwise, you're getting a lousy education. And, all right, I've already mentioned that last point. Now, how to remedy low standards. I say go to the state superintendent of education and the state school board and say, you are responsible for the standards for every school in this state. Because if a school board member tries to tighten down the screw on grades, they are sort of politicians. They'll get thrown out of office. I'll guarantee you the parents are going to raise Cain and they'll vote them out. Whereas these guys are much more immune from that kind of political pressure. So let the state superintendents do it. Lastly, my last slide, the 17th proposal on my 22 is reduce the chances of lawsuits. And here's some words out of my book. A persistent thorn in the sides of teachers and administrators is the threat of being sued. This threat warps much of what they do and distorts behavior in many ways. Every touch, every bad grade, every disciplinary action can turn into a lawsuit. There is a common belief in the system that there is no such thing as a safe touch. Now, I have a teacher that I know who had a child, a girl, who had a tantrum right in front of the door of the classroom. She could not pull that child aside, nor could she call the principal to have him come and get her. So she called the principal and said, I've got this problem, and I can't get out of the room. He said, I'll have the janitor come down and we'll remove the screens and we'll take the kids out the window. Simply to keep from moving that child because the threat of lawsuit is so high. Had another teacher tell me about, she came to school, 5th grade teacher, came to school with 2 pigtails. And a girl grabbed a hold of her pigtail and would not let go. And she couldn't, touch her. So she grabs her pigtail between the kid's hand and her scalp and walks down the hallway to the principal's office to have somebody in authority remove that child from her pigtail. Now, think about the classroom time that this takes. Both of these things that I've described, these are the kind of warped behavior that we're talking about. I met with a lawyer who works with schools some and knows a little about education law, and we both agreed, or he told me, that what we ought to do is go to mediation and arbitration for many of the lawsuits that happened. Anything having to do with anything with a sexual innuendo or physical harm, obviously not, but go to motivate mediation arbitration